Alright guys, look at these stats. Look at these stats. 384k armor, 141k health. Look at the number of white bars I have on my armor bar. It looks like a freaking barcode, man. If there's gonna be a tank build that works, it's gotta be this one. What's up you guys? So the recent changes to HP and armor attributes have been added to the PTS, a 100% buff in many cases, and I was very excited to head in and check them out for you. Right now on the PTS, you're able to purchase 500 year score item caches from the vendor for free. So what I did was purchase caches for over an hour and a half, non-stop, opening hundreds and hundreds of these caches to get the maximal possible rolls for a tank build. And this was what I was able to come up with. An absolutely ginormous amount of armor and health. 380k armor. 380,000 armor. That's more than twice the armor of a glass cannon build. And 140k health. That's just insane. Think about it. This build has almost as much health that a glass cannon build has armor. Madness. Okay, so let me just quickly show you guys the gear. On my mask, I have a IGILA mask for the total armor set bonus and the hazard protection set bonus. I was able to get pretty high rolls, 44% hazard protection, and I was able to modify 21k health onto it. 21k health is the highest roll of health I was able to get so far on a mask. Unfortunately, I don't think armor is able to roll as an attribute on the mask, so health values were the best that I could get. Centered, this talent really isn't that important, but it's a tanking talent or a so-called tanking talent, so I chose to go with it. Okay, so for the chest piece, I went with a Fenris Group AB chest piece so that I could take advantage of two talents, Harden plus 10% armor, and Unstoppable Force, which is what we need to churn out the damage on a tank build. I managed to modify the armor all the way up to 36k. I've heard some reports of people getting up to 50k. Of all these hundreds of chest pieces that I was able to get, I did not see anything even close to 50k. This was the highest roll I got, 36k. Some health rolls have rolled all the way up to 40k, but unfortunately you can only recalibrate one or the other. So even then, I was lucky enough to get both of these talents inherent on the Fenris chest piece, so I don't even need to reroll my talents. I have to choose either rerolling the armor or the health, so obviously I went with the armor. Okay, so for my holster, again, holsters didn't seem to roll with any armor stat. It's all health or health on kill, so this was the highest I was able to get, 40k health, and I went with Providence defense so that I could get the plus 8% health set bonus also. For my chest piece, Murakami Industries, so that I could get a plus 8% health one piece, modified it all the way to near 30k armor and a plus 9% total armor stat. Again, I was not able to get anywhere close to 29k armor on all the backpacks that I was able to open with the caches. For the gloves, again, gloves don't have armor, which is unfortunate, same as the holster. They do have these weird armor stat, armor per second regeneration, but honestly, these kind of values are just way too low to even bother with. 1000 armor regeneration per second, it doesn't do anything. So I went with nearly 12k health, that's the highest roll I could get, and self-adjusting, plus 20% armor regeneration, again, another tanking stat. For the knees, you have to go with Patience with this build. Patience is what's going to help you recover all of that armor at an obscene rate. And I was able to get 20k armor at the max. I chose to go with Gila Guard so that I could get another 20% hazard protection, the second piece that the mask gave me one, plus 5% total armor, and now the knee pads gave me 20% hazard protection. So in total, on my stat page, if you guys want to see the stats for defense, this is what I have: 385k armor, 141k health, and 64% total, 64% hazard protection bonus. So honestly, fire grenades did absolutely nothing to me. I just want to say again that I'm sure someone will have higher armor values than this, but I think this is a very good approximation of what you can achieve without pumping in hundreds of hours into the endgame gear farm. Don't forget that these are the rolls I was able to get by opening hundreds of gear score 500 caches. So this is very close to a maximal roll, or what you'll be able to achieve with hundreds of hours of farming. But of course, looks aren't everything. So out into the open world, I went to test it against real world encounters. How exactly does an all-out tank build comprising of almost all blue attributes match up? Well, let's start off with the easiest form of content first, the Radiant events out in the open world. I had no problems at all. None. Radiant events were very, very easy, especially when paired up with the Unstoppable Force. I was dealing enough damage, and I was running, gunning, and face tanking nearly every mob in sight without needing to worry about dying at all. So that was a great experience. So I decided to step it up a notch, challenge difficulty missions, and surprisingly, I experienced the same thing. It was a walk in the park. I was able to do enough damage to take out the mobs in a comfortable amount of time, and I was tanky as hell. I was able to do it in about 20 minutes or so. So it wasn't like it was a drag or took an extraordinary amount of time. The Unstoppable Force worked very well here again, boosting up the damage that the build lacked, and I was able to easily recover whatever damage I took through the cam launcher or patience. At this point, I had a huge smile on my face. I was able to do a challenge mission comfortably with an all blue attribute build. Man, we were rocking this. So what was next? Let's really step it up now. Let's do a level 4 control point. And that's where the Unstoppable Force, unfortunately, hit the immovable object. Except in this case, the immovable object won. Level 4 control points were hard for a tank build. Very hard. I wasn't even able to complete one of them. I unfortunately experienced the same problems plaguing any tank build on the live servers right now. For one, the amount of damage that elites were doing to me just shredded through my defenses. Shredded, even with the recent nerfs to the NPCs. Absolutely obliterated 370k armor and 140k HP within seconds. There was nothing I could do to counter the barrage of bullets. I wasn't dealing enough damage to take them out, and I couldn't tank their damage. And mind you, it wasn't like I was just standing out in the open shooting people. Most of the time, I was hiding behind cover and shooting from cover. Honestly, it was just an exercise in frustration. With this build, which again I want to emphasize involved going through hundreds of free gear score 500 caches to get the maximum rolls out of, I couldn't do anything. In the end, all I could do was hide behind cover and run away. Run away! A tank running for his life, bolted out of there like the Roadrunner once they began to flank me. As a tank build, I had to hide behind cover constantly and run the hell away the moment they started rushing or flanking me. Now at this point I know what you're saying. This is a cover shooter game. You're meant to stay behind cover. And I get that. Perhaps Massive doesn't want the RPG fantasy of a sword and board holding the line. But what got me the most was that, even with such ballooned defenses from the buffs, it made no damn difference as compared to the playstyle of my glass cannon sniper build. And I want to say that again. With a max rolled tank build, with more than twice the tankiness of my current character, the playstyle was no different from my sniper glass cannon build at higher level difficulties. No different. Both had to hide behind cover in order to survive. Both had to shoot from behind cover in order to survive. And both had to fall back once the enemy started flanking. And so, if both are playing the exact same way, then what is the point of a tank build? I was so much more effective staying behind cover and dishing out millions of damage on my glass cannon build than staying behind cover and plonking out Ps with my P shooter on the PTS tank build. In fact, on the live servers with my glass cannon build, I often didn't need to run away when getting flanked because I could kill the flankers within seconds. But with a tank build, when you get a slight whiff of an enemy flanking you, you gotta bolt out of there or you're dead for certain. Does anyone else see something really wrong with this scenario? With a tank build, I felt like even more of a coward than my glass cannon build. I was hiding a lot more than a glass cannon because patience was my only key to survival, and I was running away a hell lot more because I simply couldn't take down enemies that were rushing me. I even ran out of med packs, get that, when on my gun build I would rarely even use one or two of them. And if you thought it couldn't get any worse than this, man, it actually did. I couldn't complete the control point. I just couldn't. I kept dying and dying. So what I did instead was say, okay, all blue attributes clearly isn't working. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try just adding in a few writs. Just a few, 5 writs, some crit here, some DTE here, and leave 9 blues up for the Unstoppable Force. And guess what? It was a world of difference. A world. I completed the control point so much more easily. It still wasn't a walk in the park, but it was so much easier. And I think that demonstrates something very, very important. I don't think, and I say this with a very heavy heart, I don't think an all-out tank build will ever be viable in the Division 2, bearing one saving grace that I'll touch on in a bit. The game, with its heavy emphasis on staying behind cover, just simply cannot accommodate all-out tank builds without making DPS builds get too tanky. The stats have already been inflated by about 100%, which is a lot. What's it going to take? 200%? 300%? 500%? If my character gets killed in heavy fire in about a second, a 100% buff allows me to survive for 2 measly seconds. A 300% buff allows him to survive for a miserable 3. See where I'm going with here? At its core, the game was designed for enemies to do such an obscene amount of damage to you in such a short time, because it was designed around the cover mechanic, which is an invulnerable shield essentially. And if the game is designed around static invulnerable shields that are critical for you to hide behind, then where does that leave tanks? To make this even worse, there are no aggro mechanics in this game. None. And without a way to taunt enemies off fellow DPS party members, then essentially, what are you there for? Perhaps at least if there was some sort of taunt mechanic, that could be a case for tanks. But without one, then what purpose do tanks serve? So I thought about it, and I'll be very interested to see what you guys think about this idea. Perhaps this one saving grace for tanks. Hear me out and let me know if you agree or disagree with me. I believe that in order for a tank build to truly work, it needs a tank talent that is incredibly powerful for tanking, but extremely hard to get. A gear talent that can be accessed by tanks and tanks only. And it's easy to instill this prerequisite. Perhaps it requires 14 blues or some really high number of blue attributes that forces the player to spec into nothing but blue attributes. And I think the devs were already kind of on the right path for this with the Berserk talent that they wanted to change and require 11 reds. I don't necessarily agree with the specific decision, but I agree with their line of thought. If a player wants an absurdly powerful DPS talent, he must be willing to sacrifice everything else for it. And in the same vein, if a tank wants an absurdly powerful tanking talent, he must sacrifice everything else for it. Make a tanking talent that allows you to regenerate 10% of your armor every second, regardless of being in or out of cover. Or make a talent that puts a debuff on a limited number of enemies that you shoot at, taunting them and forcing them to focus on the tank even if he is behind cover. If they can make a true Patriot set put colored flags on top of NPCs' heads, I'm sure they can create a taunt debuff. Or be creative and have something like the player generates shields and is invulnerable for 3 seconds out of every 5, like how the named NPCs too sometimes have invulnerable shields. The possibilities are endless. And honestly, these ideas aren't overpowered at all, because the tank is basically doing no damage, especially in a group setting when the HP of the mobs is scaled up and he's deprived of the unstoppable force talent. I think this is one of the only few ways for a tank build and role to actually be viable, making very powerful tanking talents that are only accessible to tanks. Pumping more and more into armor and health just isn't going to work. It's not the way the game was designed to function, with its heavy and core emphasis on hiding behind cover. A tank that is forced to stay behind cover because he can't tolerate NPC damage, doing no damage himself, and not drawing the attention of mobs away from his DPS teammates is essentially, and tragically, doing nothing. And to make it even worse, this problem is amplified 10 times over in solo play, when you're playing the exact same way as a glass cannon and doing 10 times less damage. I truly hope that there can be more build diversity in the Division 2. It is, after all, an RPG game, with multiple roles to take on encounters. The game still is in its early stages, yes, but I, like you, do hope that it won't take like 6 months for such changes to come in. Massive has been excellent on the communication front so far, and have been doing a very good job at responding to feedback. Alongside our skill build brothers, let's hope that tank builds get the love that they very much need to. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other videos on the Division too. You may just find something in them that might brighten your day. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in DC.